Wizards rookie Deni Avdija had to be taken off the court in a wheelchair after sustaining a pretty bad-looking injury to his right leg. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Brian Sutterer, and this is your #1 source for learning about the unique medical side of the world of sports. Despite all the injury concerns in the NBA with the schedule this year, this is something that no schedule changes or amount of rest unfortunately could have prevented. This was the play where Deni was hurt, and keep an eye on his right ankle because I think that's really the focus of the injury. So the first thing, of course, as he's landing, he's already in a bit of an off-balance position, right? He's got his left leg extended really far out in front of him. He's coming down with a relatively straight right leg, and so this is just a very difficult position to land from in a controlled way. Then as he comes down, that right leg initially lands pretty normal on the floor with no increased movement or change in stress on the ankle. But then as his left foot comes down, you can see he steps on the Warriors player's shoe. Anytime we have these external stimuli, or what we call perturbations, that essentially change the expected movement or trajectory of our body when we're doing something like landing, it really just throws our entire neuromuscular control out of whack and makes the landing much more risky. The body's trying to protect itself from this unexpected landing that it's encountered, and so everything else sort of gets a little bit ignored and forgotten. So as the sequence continues, now on top of landing on the player's foot, his shoe slides forward, and that again kind of startles his whole system that's trying to control this descent. Because that occurs, he's going to try to land more with the weight on his right leg because his body knows that his left leg is not in a good position. Unfortunately, his right leg is stuck here behind another Golden State player's foot, and so it can't successfully extend out in front of him to make a good, safe landing. So then as he comes down to the ground, now that foot is stuck behind him with his knee in this flexed position, and all of his weight is coming down on a bad positioned right foot. So as he continues to come down here, that toe, if you look really closely here and about this view, you can see how that toe and that foot is externally rotated, meaning it's been rotated out to this right side of his body. Instead of that foot pointing appropriately forward, it's been twisted out to the side, which is going to stress his ankle. Then as he just continues to fall, all that weight gets put on it, and his shoe can't release from the surface of the court, so it just gets stuck there, adding additional stress into this externally rotated position. As the play continues, we can finally right there see his foot and shoe kind of release from that position, and this gives you another sense of how much external rotation was there in that foot and ankle as he came down to the ground. Now, depending on how much of that stress is being translated up through the tibia or the shin bone into the knee, this type of a position can also result in some knee injuries. But right afterwards, we saw Deni grabbing at his ankle, kind of demonstrating that that was where the big side of his pain was. So what I want you to remember from this is he's landing on that right foot and ankle with his foot in an externally rotated position, putting additional stress through specifically the high ankle ligaments of that right ankle. Before we talk about the anatomy and the injury, I want to look at a couple of other examples of a similar mechanism. This recently was LeBron James, and again, we can look at that right foot, and we saw a little bit of that external rotation, meaning the foot was pointed here outwards. As we all know, LeBron had a high ankle sprain. Another similar mechanism, but of course very, very severe, was with Gordon Hayward, when here we can see him come down when he had his ankle fracture and dislocation. As he's coming down here, he's kind of landing in a similar position. He's got that left foot externally rotated, sort of getting stuck up underneath his body as he comes down and lands on it, stressing that ankle joint. So all this comes together for what I think is at the top of my differential, seeing the footage, which is a high ankle sprain, either with a dislocation or possible fracture. Here we have our biodigital anatomy tool, and we've talked recently with Donovan Mitchell about the lower lateral ankle ligaments that are injured in a more typical inversion ankle sprain. But in a high ankle sprain, it's this AITFL ligament highlighted that runs between the fibula and the tibia. Basically, this ligament is providing support to keep the fibula and the tibia anchored together. This provides necessary stability in that ankle joint that gets stressed when you go into those external rotated positions. When I look at the ankle model here, we've of course got our tibia, the shin bone, and then the fibula here on the outside. Whenever you feel the outside bump of your ankle, what you're feeling is your fibula bone. That AITFL, or high ankle sprain ligament, is essentially like a rope that's coming to secure the fibula and the tibia together. That means that they can't split apart from one another. Where that comes into play is the bone that's deeper in the ankle joint called the talus sits between that fibula and tibia. The ankle is able to move up and down really well, but it doesn't want to move to the sides very well. Whenever we have excessive external rotation of the foot, that rotates that talus, and when it does so, it pushes the tibia and fibula apart from one another, which stresses this high ankle ligament. In the case of someone like LeBron, this results in just an injury to the ligament, but if you have an excessive amount of stress, you can not only injure the ligament, but you can also get fractures of those two ankle bones and also a possible dislocation. So now when we go back to Avdija's injury here, you can see again that right foot is externally rotated, meaning it's pointing outward to his right. And then as he comes down, his weight puts excessive force through that external rotation position that right here is going to ultimately stress potentially that high ankle sprain ligament, resulting in, at best, I would say a high ankle sprain, but also raising the possibility of a fracture and possible dislocation of the ankle joint. As I said, there's other things to consider here. Anytime you have this much bend and twisting in the knee, you have to make sure you do a good thorough knee evaluation because it's possible to have multiple injuries. And of course, this is all just based on looking at the mechanism and knowing what we see with typical patterns of orthopedic type injuries. We'll await the final word from the Wizards, but of course expect x-rays, MRI, and just based on the severity of this, it wouldn't surprise me if his season could be over unless the Wizards are able to make some deep playoff run. That's it for the video, everybody. Let me know as always any questions or comments down below. And until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.